Good. Thank you very much indeed, and thank you very much to the organisers for inviting me. It's a great pleasure to be here. Just a tiny bit about myself. The first is, well, as Rosemary said, I'm head of our doctoral school. I'm actually a chemical engineer, so I was very surprised to see some chemical engineering in the talk yesterday. And the other thing that was interesting to hear Hugh yesterday from Flinders University with his Irish brogue. And I've got a little secret to tell you that actually I'm a born and bred Australian, but I've been here for a very long time, and actually I lost my accent within about a year or two, but that was a long time ago, I think. Although I've been back and forth a little bit. So, I'm going to talk about this developing and promoting a quality culture, just a little bit about LERU. So LERU is an organisation of 23 research-intensive universities. So it's the League of European Research-Intensive Universities. You see this is the geographical spread, mostly towards Western Europe, because that's where an awful lot of research intensity is. Occasionally look at trying to extend, but they try and keep it a tight community. They want to have all the rectors around the table. And it operates through a series of policy groups, and the doctoral studies policy group is one of them. And it's really about policy rather than exchange or any of those operational things. Very much about policy, influencing the Commission in Brussels, but also influencing national agencies, European science agencies, and so on and so forth. But they're all big research-intensive universities with large doctoral cohorts. At UCL we've got, it's I think a little short of 6,000 doctoral candidates. I think it's 5,700. So it's a big volume that we have, and they all have. I don't think they're all that size, but they're all pretty big. So a little bit about my talk, a little bit about motivations, research, training, and then it's around 3 reports that we've produced. Training Talented Researchers for Society in about 2010, Good Practice in Doctoral Education, but mostly I'm going to talk about a recent report, so I'll go through the first two fairly quickly. I'll tell you, when I first started chairing this group, well, in fact I was the initial chair, and been doing it since about 2009, I thought, we're never going to get common agreement across these universities, just not possible. And you know, it was really easy. We all had the same vision about what we wanted in doctoral education. All the differences were all in the details, how you organise, how you examine, how this, that, and the other, which are, I believe, second-order effects. So what we felt was it's all about training researchers, rigorous, innovative researchers with the desire for impact. So we came up with this snappy phrase: creative, critical, autonomous, intellectual risk takers. Creative, they've got to be original. Critical, rigorous, and in their work. Autonomous, they've got to be independent. We're training to be independent in the way they develop themselves, but as well as in the way they do the research. And this concept of intellectual risk-taking, we want to be really encouraging them to push the boundaries. And they're doing, for all these things, obviously frontier research, developing new businesses, well-researched policy, research-led and informed curricula. We mustn't ever forget that. Impact has a range of impacts. Challenges to old ideas, challenging the status quo, which can be problematic when you're working with other cultures, particularly work with the Middle East and so on, for example. Find that a little bit difficult concept. And then obviously a strong contribution to European society. But we all agreed this. All of these, this was in 2009, 2010. We were all thinking that they were already producing people getting out there doing new businesses. They had, certainly the LERU, some, not all actually, had begun to embrace this skills concept in a way that transferable skills concept, in which we were leading in the UK, and they were certainly looking to us and jealous of the Roberts funds, as it happens. But they were still very much thinking about it. But again, it's not consistent and not universal, of course. But they go and do, researchers do lots of different things. This is a sort of taxonomy that you might find useful, that we thought about it at UCL. So it is, of course, research, but it's lecturing and teaching outside, public, private, charitable sectors, policy and government, entrepreneurial, managerial, professional in a range of areas, and I particularly put university administration because this is, I think, a growth area of doctoral graduates who can still be engaged in the research mission without actually being card-carrying PIs. Communication, wouldn't it be lovely if more of the press and media had proper research skills? and consultancy. So this was the main outcome of that very first report in 2010. Doctoral degrees beyond 2010, training talented researchers for society. So, doctoral graduates are the drivers of their own professional development. We wanted that to be right up front, while being immersed in a research-rich environment, research-intensive universities. Boundaries are permeable to boundaries to other research fields are highly permeable. This is interdisciplinary. Connections to the external world have a global outlook, international, and linked to other sectors of society, intersectoral. So that the skills of the new doctors are highly valuable to a knowledge society. This came out in 2010. We all signed up to this. The rectors of our universities signed up to this. So this was really the way we thought. We weren't necessarily delivering it universally, but that was certainly our aspiration. This is all in, all of these 3 reports are all on the LERU website, freely available, by the way. Make a point there. So, skills development is the cornerstone of the modern doctorate, and we were all agreeing, this is in 2009, 2010, in professional research activity, but also in personal development. So, 2 things in the report that I really wanted to get out. One was the product of the PhD is the candidate, and the thesis is just one piece of evidence, a very important piece of evidence, but it's the candidate. And we all absolutely agree with that. This won't be a surprise to you all here, but it's a bit of a surprise to me that we're all on message on this. And that they can do lots of things. So if you go back to that 2010 report, you'll find little thumbnail sketches from all of them, many of the LERU universities do about research doctoral graduates going to do all sorts of interesting things outside the academy. So that was another message we wanted to get across. And in fact, I managed to get the research director of Shell to come to that very first meeting as we started to scope that out, and he was on message as well, I'm pleased to say. And I think the big corporates really are on message. More of a problem is how we get into the SME level things, which I think remains a challenge. And indeed, those 3 things, we already had this from somebody this morning, the various policy documents, Salzburg Principles, Salzburg 2, the European Commission 7 Principles for Innovative Doctoral Training, and you see interdisciplinary, intersectoral, international. These virtually came out of our report, actually. I was quite pleased. We came just at the right time, because we really influenced the way the Commission was thinking. And then ERA framework commitment, ERA, this is European research areas, for those who are not clear, about employment and gender balance and mobility. So there's still certainly some challenges, and the recent review of these innovative doctoral training principles shows that some of this is going on, but certainly the intersectoral one is a challenge around Europe, and everybody recognises that. So we produced our report in 2010, and I said to everybody, okay, that's our aspiration, that's the way we see it. We ought to be saying something about how we do this. So we got together lots of examples from around the LERU universities, not saying that this is the best way or anything, but this is the way we are trying to meet our aspirations. And so there's this paper, Good Practice Elements of Doctoral Training, that was 2014, and we arranged them into the sort of formal research training that you will recognise from your skills programs, but also within more intellectually coherent intellectual endeavours as well. Activities driven by doctoral candidates. This is about really developing how they can develop and have opportunities to develop their own autonomy and independence. It's quite a lot, inevitably, about career development, and then there was a sort of basket box where we put in everything else, which we call concepts and structures. So I'm not going to talk about that, but it is all online. But a key message that came out of one of the key messages that LERU is always making to the Commission and to national agencies is institutional autonomy. There are lots of different ways of doing these things, and actually we're pretty good at it. So don't over-regulate, because we want to show that there are lots of ways of doing it. We don't want to be told one way. So when we got to that point, how am I going? Yes, okay, doing fine. We didn't talk about quality and quality assurance explicitly in that report, in any of those reports. Well, actually the quality issue, the first report was, this is the way we see it, this is what constitutes a quality environment. But we then didn't talk about how we maintain it. And we weren't sure that we actually had anything particularly distinctive to say. So then we started to talk about it and thought, well, I think we decided that we got, again, together lots of the way we do these things within our universities and then try and put them together into a report to say, this is the way we do it. So it's about how do we maintain this quality assurance, quality culture, and quality assurance. And we didn't only want to talk about quality assurance, because that's the killer. That's a good way to turn off your rector if you talk about quality assurance. But quality assurance is part of how you develop that quality culture. So it's about the quality of the research environment in which you work, as well as the quality of doctoral training within it. Certainly that's the way we as research-intensive universities, with big research activity, we see those two things really need to be together, and they could be looked at coherently, absolutely together, but actually there are differences as well, as you will see. There are different ways of cutting the cake about how you consider the environment in which you work. So there was quite a lot of literature, and got your name already? Nigel was saying before, the UA reports, that's the Quality Assurance Agency, UK Quality Assurance Agency, NFU, what was that? I think that was the Netherlands, it's not the National Farmers Union, I think it's the Netherlands. So what we were then doing is, okay, what do we mean by it, and how are we going about maintaining that quality culture? And we saw it as 3 levels of quality culture. It's about the quality of the structural and administrative and research environment issues. So it's, is the quality of the units that you have, does it have ways of reflecting on itself, does it have a quality environment, and are they improving on that? And that can be within departments, institutes, it could be done at faculty level, it could be done at school level, it could be done at program level, and you'll see we have all of those in LERU universities. There's no particular way to cut this cake, but you do need to look at those units and review and ensure that those units provide that quality environment. And then there's the quality of the program itself. There's a little bit of overlap there, but that's really the quality. That program could be of an individual, but more increasingly it's of a cohort, and is that cohort environment appropriate? So we felt it useful. And then of course there's the quality of the outputs as well, the thesis and the viva process and so on. So there's how you assess and enhance that process. So we wanted to sort of break that down a little bit. But really this now comes to the crux of it. And this was what we then got lots of good practice in, and then I structured this around these things, and the rest of the presentation is about this. It says, you should be stating your expectations and principles. We don't want to be told by somebody else. This is the way we believe doctoral education ought to be, and be clear and transparent and open about that to your staff, to your students, and to your external stakeholders as well. So if you're clear about that, and I'll go into more detail what that means, we then need to have some sort of scrutiny process that looks at those units, those departments, institutes, faculties, whatever it might be, as a transparent, accountable, hopefully independent scrutiny process that looks, are you meeting those expectations? There need to be some sort of measurements that inform that scrutiny process, and then there needs to be some sort of feedback mechanism into the system that ensures that the scrutiny process then develops and makes some change to that. So that's what we would call quality enhancement. We had a lot of discussion about what the translation for quality enhancement was in different languages. So that's the way we see it. And of course, that's not rocket science. That is absolutely the standard quality assurance cycle in pretty well anything you do. So the nice thing to see was that actually it really works quite well in this domain as well as others. And I'll show you some of the examples. Now, the expectations and principles, we have to break down into 4 things, where the others are just single things. So, expectations and principles, and I'm going to bring out a couple of UCL examples to show this, but I'll discuss a few. So, the expectations and oversight of the culture and quality of doctoral education. What was quite interesting is there were 2 very different paradigms throughout Europe. Some countries have a very tight legal framework, as I'm probably aware, and others have much more autonomy and the ability to set our own goals. It's usually within a framework, in the UK, the QAA framework. So in France, it's very tightly regulated, as our French colleagues will know. And indeed, the rights and obligations are set down in law, and they all have to follow this very tight program. So all of our French ones, you see, are down there because they don't have much flexibility in that. Although obviously it's not. There is some flexibility within, but it is quite tight. And likewise in Milan and in bits of Germany and so on. So within the report, each one of these, and I've just taken a few ones that I thought were interesting, there's little 2 or 3 paragraphs about each of these, and where possible there's a web reference for you to follow up if it's interesting. And then we have institutional ones. So Heidelberg has an institutional framework, and Munich and UCL as well. And I'm just going to... So this is the UCL one. You won't be able to see this, but we have a doctoral strategy, doctoral education strategy, all agreed right up to academic board level a couple of years ago. And I've got here the vision again. This is on the UCL Doctoral School website, and it's probably available and so on. UCL, what's our vision? UCL aims to train researchers from diverse backgrounds to be creative, critical, autonomous, intellectual, stable, at the frontiers of research. We aim to produce research leaders working with integrity and motivated to make a positive impact on society. We prepare them to be able to work across disciplines, which is needed to confront society's grand challenges in both academic and non-academic jobs. So that's the way we see it, and then there is, within the strategy, there's a bit about what we think makes UCL special, and then there's a set of actions which I'm taking forward for, or pushing, I may say, pushing my faculties to take forward. In the 3 strands, one is about improving the research environment, and then the next 3 come straight out of our institutional strategy and our research strategy, improving cross-disciplinarity, leadership, so opportunities for leadership for doctoral candidates as well as everybody else, and impact. Impact is right at the heart of our institutional strategy. We want everybody, our researchers and our research students, to be thinking about impact. And indeed, we're just introducing the idea of an impact statement within the thesis. So making students think about what impact might this work have. There's a little pushback, but it's gone right the way through to academic board, so we'll get this through. But it's really not, so some people say, oh, they shouldn't be having to think about impact. And so everybody needs to think about impact, and if we're training these researchers to be in the private sector or in the academic sector, they also have to think about the impact of what they work to do. So if we don't push that, we're not preparing them properly. And as I was saying to somebody, I'm a little bit tired of reading PhD theses, even in engineering, that haven't really addressed that issue. Engineering surely is all about impact on society. So that's some examples of setting out institutional expectations, and you can track through to see what some of those are. We also have, like we'll do, a code of practice about what individual supervisors and students can expect from their supervisors as well. But I want to talk more about the vision of the institution. Then there's a bit about recruitment, promotion and marketing, of being clear and transparent and open competition that they have at Leiden. We all think we have open competition for PhD places, but even my own institution, that's still not universal. And a little bit of information there. Then the guts of it: research, environment, supervision, and integrity. And there was a very interesting thing in Zurich where they were joining up with other institutions. We've heard a bit about that in the Swiss domain, a smaller country, I suppose. Research integrity at Freiburg. I love this one here: compulsory registration at Freiburg. And I left that with what does that mean? Well, when I first started, well, even now actually, at Ludwig Maximilian University in Munich, which is a huge university, I said to Isolde, how many PhD candidates are there at your university? She said, I don't know, and I can't find out. It's impossible to find out, because they still don't actually register them until they enter into the thesis for the exam. So Baden-Württemberg made it compulsory to register students once they start at the PhD, which of course is normal for, I think, many of us, most of us in the room. And various things about supervision roles and supervision training. We have a quite extensive program at UCL, but interestingly in Munich, well, in Helsinki they have compulsory, I believe. I think it's compulsory, isn't it, in Munich and in Helsinki. Munich, it's not very difficult to get anything compulsory in the German system, as I understand it. So then a certain amount about learning outcomes and assessment, and the key here is to be transparent about the criteria, the processes, and the jury, and who's actually going to be on it. Now this is not surprising to us all, but it still happens around the world that people are not yet transparent about some of these things. And of course, many of these universities have public providers, which I've done many times. Actually, I think I wrote in the Times Higher Ed an article 18 months ago saying we ought to rethink that a little bit. So, what about scrutiny processes? Now, where you can see this is my little icon up there. We're on to the second one here. And we really want to, this took people a little while to get their head around, but we need to have this difference between scrutiny of the school, institute, department, as opposed to scrutiny of the candidate. And this is this idea that we really need to be looking at the units independently as well. But fortunately there's quite a lot. In France, these doctoral schools are done, it is regulated and done on a national basis, and they review each other's. Imperial has a sort of periodic review process of their departments that we do at UCL, and that's more like what we are familiar with some sort of internal review process, and then the institutional audit, although Douglas will tell me that's due to change again before we know. And then at Munich they also have some evaluation. So there's quite a lot of interesting practice about the way they do things, which if you're interested, there's more obviously within the report and on their website. And then different ways of scrutinizing the candidate progress. So lots of people have these supervision agreements, which can work, but there's a bit of a danger that you write the supervision agreement, you put it in a drawer and you don't look at it again. So some of them also have ways of refreshing that. And then others of us have these online monitoring systems. Let me just, oh yes. I've got a slide of our monitoring system, but this is of programs and departments, so I've got a little more detail. So in Paris, their reviews look at policy, recruitment, candidate follow-up, that means careers, international, opening governance, pooling across things. So quite a lot of different things. Utrecht, sort of similar, but objective and organizational embedding, program structures, supervision models, study success figures. That's the first time things come in like. And Zurich, evaluations is done by school is the field tight teaching, promotion of junior researchers. So there they do postdocs and PhDs all together. So there's quite a lot of interesting things that you can people choose on. And then of the student progress, we've got Lund have this rather long list of things that they have to agree up front. I hope, well, as I say, these are all on the website, but I think we'll probably, I presume we'll leave the slides with somebody as well so that you can see. But lots of stuff about who's doing what, funding, how the supervision is organised. That's quite a nice thing, because I don't know about you, but in my institution, the problems we have are often occur when the supervisor and student haven't been, or supervisory team haven't been transparent about what their expectations are of supervision. Because We don't mandate you must meet once a week or you must meet, well, there is a little bit in the code of practice, but people work in different ways, and then you find there's miscommunication. So it's quite interesting to see that they explicitly say we will meet on this regularity or whatever. And various other bits and pieces. Utrecht, teaching and supervision agreement, maximum teaching requirement, because in Utrecht they all have some sort of... And then stuff about, interesting here, about the academic community. How is this candidate going to embrace and engage with the rest of the academic community within their department and beyond? And then our research student log, which we have every student must file a report every 6 months. And it's there not to replace the supervision, but it's just there for everybody involved in this project to sit back every 6 months and look at what's the progress since the last review, what are the plans for the next 6-month period, what skills are needed to achieve that, and then the fourth element is a skills self-assessment against the VTI Research and Development Framework. And this is what all our graduate tutors have for their students in their department. And this one here, like this big, this is fine, this person's going, right towards the end, everything's going hunky-dory. This one here is doing fine, but the yellow dots mean that one or more of the supervisory team hasn't been signing them off. So the graduate tutor can go and say, oh wait, excuse me, you need to do something. And this, here we've got a problem. This means somebody is really not engaging. So quite a powerful and quick and convenient tool for the graduate tutors. So a little bit on measurement, various quality indicators, employment rate, satisfaction, ratio of the number of supervisors to candidates, time to completion, application, successful completion, so on. And in Paris, UPMC is the Université Paris, Pierre and Marie Curie in Paris. They have a set of these. We have them, I've got on the next slide. Helsinki has some things as well. This is my one on the next slide. So what I now, because we're such a huge institution, I have 11 faculties. And I'm expecting every faculty has to do a rolling 3-year doctoral strategy, and we meet with them and we probe them. And I prepare for them a set of indicators. And these are the indicators to say how's things going at the moment, and will that help you achieve the goals that you're setting out in your strategy. So admissions, candidates, number of approved student staff ratio basically, qualities and diversity data, PRES satisfaction scores, research student log data, transferable skills update, submission rates, and career destinations. To say the career destination data is not particularly good, but we give them what we've got. And then finally, feedback. There are various different ways of having quality enhancement mechanisms. Supervisor training in Leuven. Strasbourg, they just have an annual registration and feedback meeting with candidates. Doctoral candidates' voice in Heidelberg is a bit like a sort of senate of the graduate students. So quite a lot, and we'll be a bit more used to our concept of quality assurance here in the UK. Quality is enhancement here in the UK because it's embedded in our educational system. Well, I thought you might like this enhancing quality through incentives, which in Paris, if you don't do well, they still have quite a lot of money that comes from the university. So if you don't do well, your department won't get very many doctoral scholarships. Oh yes, this is the UPMC ones that they have down here. And the number of doctoral positions distributed between doctoral schools is dependent on these things. Wouldn't it be nice if we had that power? Right. So here's some conclusions, and then I've got one slide after this, which is a bit about trends. So maintain a high-quality doctoral environment through this 4-stage cycle. Independent and transparent oversight. So it's not just, it's got to be transparent, so these things need to be published, but you need some independence, at least from different parts of the institution, preferably from outside, so that it can come in and give a fresher view. But this is the key, a key message. Diversity. There are lots of different ways of skinning this particular cat, so we don't want to be over-regulated. So I've got one slide here that I thought might bring out what I see future trends. Well, this interdisciplinary, international, intersectoral, I think we all agree, and particularly that intersectoral one is very important, and still we've got some way, but still some way to go there. Cohorts, we've got going on concentration, research concentration, open science and integrity, very important issues. I think links to the professions in different ways, how we can tackle this intersectoral thing. How can we find better mechanisms that we've got already for greater collaboration in research and training, and research in the professional context. I'm quite a fan of these professional doctorals, actually. Broad career opportunities, and how we can make these more transparent and open. But I think this wider acknowledgement of the changes that have taken place in doctoral education, and I was having you go, Richard, earlier, that we need to get out there and tell the world more that actually the doctorate has changed, and I think it's changed quite substantially, and we're producing broader-minded people, but they're still able to be creative, critical, autonomous, intellectual risk takers, taking those ideas and helping to drive innovation forward. And I think the big challenge, actually, a bigger challenge at the moment, is this training of all early career researchers, because I think the postdoc space is a bit of a wild west out there, and it's something I've just taken on my own institution. So, thanks to all my members of the doctoral studies community, especially Katrine, that's a picture of Leuven, where the LERU office is. And everything is on that website, leru.org. And quite a lot of other really thoughtful, often rather long, may I say, but thoughtful reports about the ways of running research intensive universities. Thank you very much.
Food for thought there. Have we got time for a couple of questions? Can you say who you are, where you're from?
It's done.
Okay, I'll start with thank you, David, for a really, really interesting presentation. And I think, well, speaking personally, I hadn't realised that all that work was going on behind the scenes to produce those publications. And I would recommend that people actually look at the website, because it doesn't matter what you're trying to do. You can find examples, as we've had during the conference actually, of where somebody's also trying that, and you can maybe share their ideas. So I think the LERU documents are a really valuable resource, and what's online. Towards the end of your talk, you said you were a bit of a fan of professional doctorates. And I just wanted to pick that up in the context of your talk. You've got a league of research-intensive universities, some of which will be offering professional doctorates and others won't. And I just wondered, I was sort of curious if during your long meetings, you actually have identified that either it's all the same for professional doctorates, in other words, there's no difference between your aspirations and your practical application of your ideas in professional doctorates and other forms of doctorate, or whether you do things slightly differently, whether those universities do. And I know most of Europe doesn't look at the professional doctorate. I know that JP, who we heard from yesterday, runs an industrial PhD scheme. So there are different forms, and I just wondered if that comes up during your discussions. Thanks.
Okay, I'm going to answer that in two ways. The first is what we understand by a professional doctorate does exist, but it's quite rare in Europe. So we haven't talked about those very much. There's still quite a lot of skepticism of them. But there's certainly a lot of mechanisms for collaboration in the PhD, or in the doctorate, let's say, which are, well, it's like even our own professional doctorate, it's quite a range of activities. So a lot of them, they do have a lot more strong engagement, certainly the Germans, with some of the German universities are a bit, not so much the LERU ones, but I'm also on Advisory Board in Aachen, and they can be a bit too tightly tied into industrial priorities. So we did talk about that quite a lot. So there is a sort of range of things. They are expected to do more things, and of course they're mostly in Europe expected to do teaching as well, much more than ours are. So then if I talk specifically about professional doctorates, even in my own institution, there's some variation, and I'm not talking about the NGD, which we treat as exactly the same as the PhD. I'm talking about the other clinical psychology, education, dentistry. We've got a whole range of things. And we have a particular model of the way that we see it, but I don't see that as, my whole message here is, this is the way we do it, you can take it or leave it. But, so ours have some taught component, then there's a sort of professional practice portfolio, and then there is a substantive research project anchored in professional practice, but that's only 50,000 words typically or less, not 100,000. But it's still, all those research messages are still the same, but obviously they're not going to have the same body of evidence or necessarily the same depth as a PhD. But it's still, to my mind, it's research training and training at doctoral level.
Thank you, David. I think your vision statement for UCL was excellent and so on. And I like your quality process that you had going through that. So my question is, in terms of engaging with the vision statement and all of those things that you had as sort of quality, how do you know that those kind of things are taking place deep within your departments?
Douglas can answer this question just as well as I did, since he was on our institutional review. The awareness of the specifics of the doctoral education strategy sort of patchy around the institution, but I'll tell you the way I do it, because we have 11 faculties, and each one, they mostly have 600, so they're quite big, the doctoral entities. So they have to produce this strategy, a rolling strategy every year, and we specifically ask them the way in which they are meeting the objectives of doctoral strategy and the UCL 2034 institutional strategy as well. So then, it's then they're all the time trying to demonstrate to me this is how, and they're not meeting everything, but they're meeting a number of things. That's the way that I do it, and it's working, I think, reasonably well, and I'm glad to say we've got accommodation from the QAA for that piece of practice. We're into the third cycle of it now, so and it really is, I'm really seeing a difference. The first time they were thinking, what's this? And in fact, the first time this strategy wasn't in place, actually. But the next time we really saw a difference, and we're really starting to see a difference, and them to engage and to know more closely where their problem areas would be.
Okay, well thank you very much, and I think everyone can now go home and terrify all the deans in their faculties by telling them they'll soon be requiring a faculty strategy if that's what you want. So I look forward to hearing about that in 2 years' time. Thank you very much.